Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's 10:30, so we can get you guys to lunch on time. How's everyone enjoying the housing conference so far? Woo, good, good. Thank you. So, welcome to today's panel discussion on the housing disparities for immigrants. My name is Shahida Wilkes. I am a supervisor with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, and it is my great privilege to host this important conversation where will explore the complexities, challenges, and opportunities surrounding immigration in our Commonwealth. Immigration is not just a topic of policy and politics. It is a deeply human story of resilience, aspiration, and the search for belonging. It shapes the fabric of our societies, enriching our cultures and economies, while also raising critical questions about identity, equity, and inclusion. Today, we are joined by a distinguished group of experts who will share their insights and perspectives. We have Howard Alvarez, with Programs Director with the Pittsburgh Hispanic Development Corporation. We have Sarah, next to Howard, Sarah Siplak, from Operations Manager with the Jewish Family and Community Services, Refugee and Immigrant Services. We have Dejana Bates, a staff attorney with the Community Justice Project. And we have, last but not least, Binu Rajo from the Bhutanese Community Association of Pittsburgh. Thank you so much for being here today. So when the Housing Committee was planning this conference, I thought that immigration, well, we all collectively thought that immigration would be a great topic to discuss. Everyone is watching the news, we're seeing all the enforcements going on. So we wanted to focus on like I said, the disparities in housing with our immigrant communities. So we'll start with Howard. Question for you. Please, I guess, define immigration and what it means to be an immigrant.
Well, first, I would like to thank you for the invitation. I think this is a wonderful initiative where we can interact and know each other. This is a question that could take me the hour and a half to respond. However, I will start with the formal definition of immigration, that is the act of moving from a country to another, with immigration as leaving the country, immigration as arriving, with immigration and all of those interactions and relocations around the world where people move one place to another, right? But the real reason why immigration is important is because of what is the motive, what is the motivation for it. I would say that immigration is because of looking opportunities and improving your life or your quality of life. It could be because of political persecution as well. It could be because of climate change. It could be because of discrimination, human rights violations, and many other reasons. But for some immigrants, the act of migrate somewhere else, it is an option. For others, it is the only way to save your life. So you will have different perspectives of immigration, right? And in that sense, within that situation, you will have different mechanisms to migrate, right? And this is more or less what the concept of this idea of immigration is about. But an immigrant, and this is quite a difficult question because I'm an immigrant, an immigrant is a human being who decided to leave their own country because some of all these reasons that I mentioned. But it is a person or it's a household that decided to move forward and have a better life, a better future, and a better tomorrow for their families. So that's an immigrant, a human being with a lot of courage, with a lot of dreams, and with a lot of perspective and excitement about what the future could offer for them.
Thank you. So what I hear you're saying is that immigrants come here for a reason.
Yeah.
Now, immigrating, is it the same as being a refugee?
So I'm not an attorney, so and Sarah will define better what a refugee is. But we are all immigrants, and we can agree with that. What will change the definition of an immigrant in general, of a refugee or an asylee or a temporary protection status holder or a humanitarian parole holder or parolee. So is the mechanism where you arrive, at the mechanism the country that receive you will offer you or you need to go through. But at the end of the day, all of us are here because we have a need, okay? And we have a willingness to fight, to improve, and overcome that need.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for defining that and clearing that for us. Do you believe that our immigrant community right here, our immigrant community members, understand their housing rights and how to file a discrimination complaint, if and when they need to?
So I would say that's a question that describes a little bit the work that community organizations were doing in the city of Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and the Pittsburgh region. Immigration is a process of adaptation and education as well. So you need to know the resources you have in order to use it, in order to apply it, in order to get benefit from, or at least defend yourself. At least in terms of the Latino community, we're talking about 30, I will say like a general number because there are 34,230 something, but let's say 35,000 from the last census of 2020.
Is that right here?
Yeah, that's Allegheny County, right? And we are not considering like the pandemic and the recent wave of migrations that we had to the United States in the last 4 years. However, I will say that more than that understanding these kind of processes, more important is for them to know the organizations and the mechanisms of navigation that they have to help them to do it. Because, for example, I'm with my housing manager and housing coordinator. They are the ones like going with the clients to do this kind of complaints or getting any other assistance as the one that we saw in the previous panel. Because when you arrive here, you do not really know much about how to act or how to do this kind of complaints. But I think like navigation is key in order to accomplish all of these processes.
And it's organizations like yours that assist them in filing complaints. Because the PHRC Pittsburgh office serves Allegheny County, like you said, with roughly 30,000 immigrants right here. And I would believe that we would see more.
Yeah,
You know,
the 34,000 are just Latinos.
Okay, just
In Allegheny County, that we represent around 2.93%. I would like to Sarah to speak about other regions of the world. Of course, I will talk about Latinos, but I would like to have a broader conversation about all the topics that we will develop today.
absolutely. Thank you so much. So when you do assist the Latino community with complaints of discrimination, what types of complaints do you see? What's the most common discrimination that they're facing?
So in terms of housing, if we will be talking in that regard, I would say the application process when they are trying to rent a house, for example, all of us, we know that the reason how a landlord can decide in terms of renting or not, it has to be financial, okay? Besides that, it will be considered discrimination. But sometimes when clients with a different background, a client with another language, a client that at first sight doesn't understand the protections and the regulations in terms of housing, they can face discrimination even though when they are renting and the landlord doesn't want to provide a lease, when the landlord doesn't want to do any effort in communicate with the client, because sometimes these are threats that the landlords can take in advantage to get more money for the client, to increase fears because of their immigration status, or to get another benefit because of the vulnerability of the household. So that's the reason why the organizations that we're participating today, we have a very important role in navigating clients, educating clients, providing them with resources for them to know their rights. Okay, I think that that's fundamental because discrimination is an area that some landlords can take advantage of when you do not know the ecosystem or the language.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to my next question, what is the most common misconception that housing providers, landlords, and financial institutions have about immigrant families who are looking to rent or purchase a home?
Yeah, usually when you connect with landlords, and we have a renting program at the Pittsburgh Hispanic Development Corporation, where we collaborate with flexible landlords, different landlords around Allegheny County. The first misconception is that we are not reliable, that we will not pay rent, or that we will destroy the house. And I will destroy those arguments because as immigrants, and I think this is a perspective that we all share. I mean, if you're in another country looking of having or building a better life, so you will be the best version of yourself. So you will keep, because of everything that you have to fight and go through because of the immigration process that you went through or the things that you had to leave behind, you will make an effort of having a house that will be the best place for your children, your family, and yourself. But beyond this, it is, with the clients that we have, we do not have a problem in terms of payments of rent. Sometimes families struggle, I mean, and you do not need to be an immigrant to struggle. You are in need sometimes of financial resources. You are in need of certain times of legal resources. But families are very responsible. Families in this pursuit of having a better future, so they will accomplish what they do need to have to accomplish in the lease. But it is important to know that you cannot do what you don't know how to do. So this is the part of the community ground roots organizations. We have to make an effort and educate the client in terms of adaptation. For example, when I arrived in Pittsburgh, I didn't know that I have to shovel the snow and cut my grass, right? And this is something that is a lease violation. If you do not know, if you do not have someone who explains you that you have to do that. And that could end up in an eviction. So if we are there as community organizations, as a government as well, by your side, let them, this community know, giving them the opportunity to understand that they have to do that. So I'm pretty sure that you will have less evictions. You will have less of the negative effects that create this stigma about immigration, and sometimes it's because you don't simply know that you have to do certain things.
Absolutely, thank you so much. Sarah, this question's for you. I know that Howard, basically, his organization focuses on the Latino population. What does discrimination look like for the members of the community that you serve?
Well, thank you again for having us. And I do want to start out just by asking if we can take a collective deep breath, because Dejana and I were just chatting before this started. Thank you for showing up, for being here for this conversation in this climate that we have right now. This conversation is so incredibly important, and the work of everyone that is here today is so incredibly important. So thank you all for showing up, and may we all start our day with a collective deep breath. So, the agency that I work for, Jewish Family and Community Services, works with refugees and immigrants from all over the world. So they are coming from not only Latin countries, but we have many families coming from Africa, from Syria, from Afghanistan, from the Ukraine, you name it. We have, as Howard mentioned, we are all immigrants. We all came from somewhere. And I think that there is a thought out there about what newcomers to a country bring with them and how they handle themselves in that new country. I will say, and I don't want to jinx anything, I don't feel like in my particular line of work, I've been with JFCS for about 3.5 years, we are not directly seeing discrimination around housing. We are very fortunate to have a lot of partners in Allegheny County that are willing to work with families, and I think a lot of it has to do because of the advocacy and the organizations that are working on their behalf. So yes, there are misconceptions about how families are going to treat the home that they move into. And yes, of course, this can be an issue. As Howard mentioned, a big part of the work that we do is around cultural orientation. There are families who perhaps have been living in a refugee camp for decades. We have had families come that have not lived in a home. So when they come here, maybe they don't understand how to use a toilet and running water in their home. And so our role as advocacy and service provider organizations is to help them understand how to be in their homes. But Howard isn't wrong. Everyone has come through great adversity to come to this country and to flee perhaps whatever the situation is that they are coming from. And they are coming here to make a better life for themselves and for their families and for their children. And so it's a hard question to answer about distinct discrimination that is happening, because it's not necessarily only around housing, it's around people, who they are as people and what they bring to our region. So I think that the misconceptions about paying, everything that Howard mentioned, are really the main things. How are they going to pay their rent? Are they going to take care of their home? Do they understand what utilities are? Do they know how to be a good neighbor? And all of these things they are genuinely people. We are all genuinely people who come at the world from our own perspectives. And so the discrimination is kind of widespread. Currently, in the current political climate, there are a lot of misconceptions that I'm not going to speak to, Dejana will speak to, but around what is an immigrant, what is a refugee, what does it mean to be in this country legally, and that changes constantly. And so it's a hard question to answer, and it's more about looking deep into ourselves and our humanity and understanding that we are all here for the same reason, to live and make a life for ourselves. So I don't know that I answered your question specifically, but I do think that it's a more broad question of what do we all face.
Well, that's okay. You answered a lot of questions there. No worries. But I just want to go off script a little bit and follow up with that. Or if discrimination happens, is it being underreported? I mean, are there concerns about reporting the discrimination within the immigrant community?
Absolutely. I actually am working with a family right now that is having an issue with their landlord, and when I mentioned to them the different avenues that they could take to try to get their issues addressed, their very first question was, if I file a complaint, is this going to count against me? Is there a chance that somebody's going to come after me? They're going to find me? And I don't have a great answer for that. And I do think that, of course, especially with everything going on right now, there is a concern that things are being underreported or not reported at all. And not to harp on this one particular issue, but I just learned of this issue that was happening on Friday, and it has been going on for a month. And they were afraid to let their case manager at JFCS know what was going on because of the fear of repercussion. So I absolutely, though I can't speak to any statistics about it, I do think that it is probably underreported, and there isn't a ton known about it because there is a fear of repercussions, whether it's their legal status or their housing status, not understanding what their rights are as a tenant and what their rights are within living in a home, and that they have the right to a safe and stable home.
That being said, and this is the question that was going to be kind of complex, how has obtaining housing for immigrants changed in the past 5 years, and what do you predict may happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Again, a very difficult question to answer. But I think, one thing that we have seen has gotten worse since the pandemic especially is affordability. While Austin Davis earlier was saying that Pittsburgh is a livable city, what does that mean? And every city in the country is different, right? Affordable housing in Pittsburgh versus affordable housing in San Francisco looks very different. It's a very different landscape. But what we were seeing years ago, 5 years, 10 years ago, in Pittsburgh was that families were coming and being resettled in areas with others within their community. So there would be a neighborhood where there would perhaps be a lot of families from Nepal, and they all had that sense of community. Or we have neighborhoods where a lot of our Syrian families were getting resettled. Unfortunately, that really has disappeared from the landscape, because at this point, when we're assisting families and looking for housing, we're just trying to find something that is affordable, and that is looking for market rent, and that means anywhere. So rather than saying, oh, it would be wonderful for this Syrian family to live next door to this other family that we resettled 4 years ago, there is no housing available in that community. And so we are just looking wherever we can to find a home that will house a family of a specific size. I mean, of course it varies. We have single individuals come over. We have families of 12 come as well. So finding housing that can accommodate the family, and landlords, of course, that are willing to work with them. So we're seeing higher and stricter income requirements, which, of course, for a newly arrived refugee family is very difficult. We do have an employment team at our agency that works to help them find employment, but as we learned in the panel before this, the minimum wage in Pennsylvania is $7.25. $7.25. That is not a livable wage for a family. So having high income requirements really requires having advocates and agencies on your side that, not all resettlement agencies can co-sign on a lease or guarantor on a lease. We have the ability to do that in a small percentage of cases. So for sure, income. And then the other thing is technology. A lot of landlords and property managers are moving more towards doing everything online, completing an application online, being able to check your email to know when you have been approved for housing, answering the phone. And of course, for refugee and immigrant families, this is very difficult. If you're not a native English speaker, you don't have a lot of experience with technology, you don't come to the United States with a laptop, you don't have affordable internet at home, using a cell phone for a lot of families is even something that is not easily navigable for them. So while we have families with children and teenagers who are able to assist them, for our elderly clients and for clients that are pre-literate, meaning they are not necessarily even literate in their own language, overcoming these technological barriers of understanding how to complete applications online and even answering the phone to get a call from the housing authority saying you have been moved off the wait list. If they answer the phone and the person is speaking in English very quickly, oftentimes they're going to hang up because they're like, no English. And if there isn't interpretation provided, then there's no way that they're going to be able to communicate with them. So I think that the landscape, it grows and changes constantly. Obviously, right now, the current administration it is very difficult to have conversations around refugees and immigrants because the status and the pathway to coming into the United States changes constantly. So I do think that overarching, though, it's the technological and the income requirements that are very difficult to overcome.
And to that point, what are the most critical changes that we must make to face the future housing burdens for immigrants in our community here?
I think just understanding what immigrants and refugees bring to a community and helping landlords and helping municipalities understand that what refugees and immigrants bring is they are bringing this desire, as Howard mentioned, to build a better life for themselves. They are going to want to work harder. They're going to want their children in school. They're going to want to live in a safe place. So, helping understand why it is important to help families to overcome these barriers, why, application fees, completing applications online, helping landlords and the broader community understand what are the specific barriers that do have a lot to do with language barriers and technological barriers and helping them overcome those. Language access is a big one. I mean, I will say, we use Google Translate, we use Tarjimly, we use various interpretation services. Global Wordsmiths locally is a really amazing organization that has interpretation and translation services. But there are also companies that are national, international, that provide telephonic interpretation and video interpretation. So there are things out there that many of them will have a cost associated with them, but there are also free apps that are out there. And a big conversation that I often have with landlords is Google Translate is not perfect. It is not the most ideal way to communicate, but it is a path to communication. At the very least, if most of the words are being translated and the concept that you're trying to convey is getting through there, that is a win, so that you can communicate directly with your tenants. And then also just having property managers, landlords, agencies that are dealing with housing offer training and talk to their staff about the benefits of renting to refugees and immigrants. What are the tools that are out there to assist them? What are the ways that they can advocate on behalf of them? How can they take steps to understand that these are tenants, these are people? This keeps going back to the moderator from the last one, ended the presentation with talking about these are people. People. We need to stop necessarily, pigeonholing people into these are refugees and immigrants. These are people who are trying to make a better life for themselves, who have come here to have a life for themselves. And so ensuring that everyone understands we all want a place at the table, regardless of what the history is and what the language barrier is.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We need to change that image that we're seeing everywhere about immigrants. They're human beings. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm going to jump to Ms. Bates, to Jonna Bates. What laws are we making the greatest advancements to protecting housing for immigrants, and how are they helping?
So I could very easily say there are none. At this, I'm going to try not to be very political, but the politics of it all. What I will say is we are at a time of a lot of immigration protections being rolled back. But what I will, and maybe later I'll get into one of the new executive orders that got rid of huge guidelines and further protections for immigrants. However, I will acknowledge that there still are laws that do require language access to be provided, which is a lot of what I do, is language access in housing, and so Title VI still applies. Even the ADA still has language access requirements because language access falls under national origin discrimination. And so keeping in mind that though we are in a time of serious rollbacks, there still are legal requirements that are likely in play. In addition, though these guidelines have been repealed, it hasn't been specifically said that these services should stop being provided.
So what are some of the top, I guess, housing, the legal issues that your organization is seeing from the immigrants here in Pennsylvania?
So as I mentioned, I mainly do language access issues, so not translating the lease, not having conversations interpreted, being tenants or potential applicants being told to bring their own interpreter. They can't do that. And what gets under my skin is having children be their interpreter for the language access portion. There's also people being unjustly denied due to their citizenship status, and not because they don't have status, but because the individual doesn't understand the paperwork they're looking at. Immigration is very complicated, and I do acknowledge that. I am not even an immigration attorney. I help with immigrants' rights, but we've had to make affidavits on behalf of clients, send emails, send letters, make phone calls to landlords saying the documentation they gave you is sufficient. You know, I understand that you're looking for this very specific document, but what they gave you is sufficient. Also, as to keep kind of going back to what seems to be the central point, is these are people, and so they have the same issues as other clients. They may have disabilities that are eligible for reasonable accommodations, maintenance issues, and the overarching, though all immigrants don't have language barrier issues, a lot of them do. And so it's the same issues as, you know, citizen tenants. And now you have this extra layer, this extra barrier, this extra time sensitivity because of the language, because of the culture. You know, though we're talking about housing specifically, you know, even talking about culture, we've had to explain to clients, there are laws about how often you need to send your children to school. You know, as Howard mentioned, they don't know what they don't know. And so it is the same issues as our citizen clients, our citizen tenants, with just additional cultural and language-based issues.
So just to follow up on that, so what can landlords do to make sure they are following the laws when renting to immigrants? I see it all over your face.
Because my response is going to be like the most accommodating and the most, maybe not even what you legally have to do, but what's nice, what's helpful.
Yeah.
So taking the initiative to provide even interpretation services. So for those who may not know, interpretation is the oral turnover of language, translation is the written. And so written can be more expensive, it can be more difficult to ascertain. Pittsburgh has a lot of various language populations here. And so I acknowledge, and I may not acknowledge this on an actual case, but I acknowledge here that translation can be more difficult. But as Sarah mentioned, there's several different ways to provide interpretation services. I don't necessarily agree with Google Translate, but it can be useful. That is, but there are language line, Tarjimly, there's different services to help the client understand, because it can be very difficult to be mad at someone, to try to evict someone for not doing something or for doing something they shouldn't have when they didn't know in the first place. And so trying to have those basic conversations, giving people the opportunity to try to advocate for themselves, I think is a good foundation to start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm so sorry. I just
Absolutely.
was
Jump right
thinking
in.
while you were talking about going back to what you said, Howard, about the families don't know what they don't know. I think that also goes for landlords. So
Absolutely.
it's taking the time to educate themselves on what is acceptable paperwork and what they are allowed to utilize and what they are allowed to ask for is a big part of it. Is just our landlords taking the time to understand what they don't know about very specific paperwork and things like that. So I feel like that's going to resonate with me, you don't know what you don't know, and so hoping that landlords advocate on behalf of their potential tenants.
And I'll just say, and encouraging them that if you don't know, don't just say no. Because a lot of them, in a space of confusion, will know because I don't want to worry about it. You just had to Google. You just had to look it up.
Yes, I do. A lot of landlords do call us when they're facing issues with, whatever reason, for help. And we encourage our landlords here to reach out to us if you have a question or if you don't know how to handle a certain situation. That's always a good thing to reach out to the commission and get your questions answered, so you don't break the law and you don't end up with a complaint of discrimination against you. So my next question for you, Ms. Bates, the Community Justice Project helps immigrants with the Violence Against Women's Act, other known as VAWA, applications. Can you tell us more about VAWA and how it's applied specifically to immigrants facing legal housing issues?
Sure. So I have my notes here. I had to reach out to our immigration attorney to kind of help me connect some of the dots.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to read this. VAWA applies to non-citizen spouses of either sex. Though it is called the Violence Against Women Act, it does apply to men also, who would be eligible for family petition green card, but there is evidence of physical abuse or extreme cruelty in the marriage. I'll add that it doesn't just have to be physical violence. VAWA has expanded what they term as abuse into including financial abuse, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but abuse is not just, doesn't necessarily just have to be the physical of it all. And so abuse within the marriage allows the victim or non-citizen applicant to apply for status on their own without the need of that family connection. This can be a route for a green card. There is also a quasi-status under VAWA, which can be provided in the meantime to allow them to get additional protections. There's also, and again, as I mentioned, immigration being complicated and the paperwork can be kind of difficult to parse through. There's also something called a prima facie determination, which basically means your complaint looks okay, we haven't fully reviewed it, but you can go ahead and start receiving certain benefits. Some people may not be eligible to get their legal permanent resident status and can remain on VAWA and still entitled to certain benefits. And so some of the benefits, they can receive subsidized housing, they can receive, Section 8, they can receive various other benefits. And as I kind of alluded to before, in addition, VAWA can be used. So VAWA is saying, I cannot discriminate against you because of your history as a domestic violence survivor. And so that comes up in ways I think a lot of landlords don't realize in some of the work I've done. For example, if the lease says something about not a lot of criminal activity. However, if the criminal activity is related to neighbors calling the police because of escalated sounds relating to the violence, you cannot then evict that tenant for that issue. That is discriminating against them based on that status. In addition, we've had a case where we've been able to have a landlord denied an applicant based on a negative credit history. We'll come to find out, looking at her credit history, her credit history showed some owed monies due to various debts taken out in her name as coerced by her abuser. So it was situations where, hey, I need a new phone, go get the phone in your name because your credit is better, or go get this loan for us, I'll make the payments, and this will be the better life for us. And so also adding to culturally not understanding that kind of thing. And so then when the abuser later doesn't make the payments, that judgment, that debt, sometimes even an eviction is left on the abused. And so we have been able to get a landlord to accept a tenant after explaining this to them, that your denial based on their credit, your denial based on this past eviction history is based on their status as an abuse survivor. Yeah.
So last year, my panel was on domestic violence, and this is something that's very, very important to me. So just not to get off topic about immigration, but I just wanted to, does the VAWA Act that we have in place, does it help immigrants who are in domestic violence, abusive relationships? Does it help with them coming out and speaking up and not, I guess, reporting it? Does it help with them more, specifically when, you're dealing with the families who immigrate from other countries, and then, but, their culture, I guess allows them to stay in that abusive relationship, and you come over here and it's culture's different.
And so I think that gets into the mind of someone who has experienced trauma. And I think even, and this is not to turn this into a trauma-informed counseling moment, but those who have experienced that kind of trauma, again, aside, and I think this is, as I mentioned earlier, talking about their issues as tenants. There's issues, period. So as being a survivor of someone even still possibly in a domestic violence situation, there are issues. There are psychologies that have to be overcome. There's a lot mentally, physically, possibly emotionally, financially. If he or she, if the abuser took the check and you don't even know how to manage your money because this is all you know, those are issues on a citizen level. Yeah. And then to add language, to add culture, to add, there may have been a situation where the abuser did speak English and the abused did not. And so now they're being told these things, they're being lied to in the interpretation of it all, which is why I get very concerned about family members being used as interpreters, because we don't know if they're actually interpreting as English speakers. And so while I will acknowledge that the law has benefits, there are funds, there are programs, other community organizations that are there to provide for them, it's a lot to overcome. And so, yes, the law is there, and the law absolutely has these provisions, again, as I mentioned, that can even provide for citizenship outside of the abuser. It's a lot, and it takes a lot of education. It takes a lot.
Thank you, thank you. So this question is for Ms. Binu Rigel down there, who works with the Bhutanese Community Association, which is one of the largest population of immigrants here in Pittsburgh and Western area. What would you say is the most challenging housing obstacle faced by immigrants today? What are you seeing?
First of all, thank you. As Howard, Sarah said, like most of the things, the same thing. Number one is language barrier. Same like language barrier, and then also lack of education of our community people. I can say like lack of education. We were, as we discussed earlier, we were not in the house like this, back home or in the refugee camps. I'm also telling my experience because I'm a live refugee. I was a refugee there for like 2 decades. And so in my experience also, I was not raised, and I was not lived in these housings. And the most number one thing is language barrier. Second one is I can say like credit history. They check credit history. Even we just come to America, just we're a new refugee here. We do had like the organizations that help, like the co-sign for the first 6 months, I can say. But if I decided to move to a different one after 6 months, they're not gonna co-sign me, and then I do not have enough credit history of renting credit history or whatever. And then other thing is like technology issue. Technology, filling online is a very difficult thing. Even now, our people are here more than like 15 years, but even now they do not know how to use, all of them do not know how to use these technologies and fill out these forms. Most of the things that we already talked are the same, like language barrier. And one thing is family dynamics. For our culture, we like to stay together. We do have like 1-2 person staying alone, but most of our community people want to stay together. Like 6 people, 7 people, up to 12 people, so 13 people, and it is very difficult to find like more than 3 bedrooms apartment.
So, follow up on that, you guys want to stay together. I mean, all races want, want to stay together, but we need that diversity. But how important is the impact of that segregation of your community and your families? How important is that on your social cohesion? Now, I know that you're a person with lived experience. So, how important was that to have your family and your community all in the same space?
It is very important. I can say number one, because that is the priority of our people that, again, because of those things, same things like language barrier and helping hands, they would like to stay together, even in the community. Like they do not, if they got an affordable housing, like 30 minutes away from their community, like they were like, no, they just go back. That's one problem. Like they would like to stay together, even to get simple help. They expect help, and they're like scared. There is a fear of not knowing the language, not knowing the rules and regulations.
Absolutely. Well, what can we do as a community to help with that, with some of those fears, to help ease some of those fears, and for maybe more diversity in your culture?
Sign of like welcoming to the people from different communities, in sense of, as we talked earlier, like providing interpretation, and then telling them we are here for you. Treating equally, I mean, they are treating equally, but our people think like they may not be treating equally. And one thing that I also want the landlord and the neighbors to understand the culture. Like, I was working with one family this week, yesterday and then last week. And I was there in the leasing office. They were like, his culture is, he talk like loud, like aggressive, like he's not being aggressive, but they might have thought that he's aggressive. And I have heard those kind of stories before, that he's so aggressive, they're so aggressive, so I cannot let them stay here. Understanding their culture, they do speak like that. Understanding that is very important.
Thank you so much. So I want to go back to Howard here. What is the number one way we can make a substantial difference for immigrants who have difficulty obtaining housing?
I would say that not just the organizations, the community organizations that we are part of, I believe that the city of Pittsburgh, that we are, as on these panels, we are in many committees, subcommittees, just trying to find solutions to housing for immigrants and affordability as well for housing. I believe that we need to create more spaces and opportunities for affordable housing for immigrants. For example, and I will speak again of the Latino community. And this is like the reality. There is not affordable housing for undocumented folks. So we need to have those conversations where we are measuring like how much or how is the weight of all the efforts and all the investment and all the dedication that immigrants community provide for the redevelopment of city as Pittsburgh or Allegheny County, and start to thinking that out of the box and start creating mechanisms to support them, because they are here, they are part of the ecosystems, they are providing services, they are helping, and they and we are not living somewhere else. So that's the reason why I believe that we need to find more resources in order to accommodate this community that is arriving in Pittsburgh.
Absolutely, thank you. Sarah, what are some of the ways that people from your field and organizations like all of you up here are making a difference in the Commonwealth in regards to assisting our immigrant population, specifically with their housing needs, discriminatory issues that they have?
So again, we're very lucky in southwestern Pennsylvania to have a really wonderful grouping of advocacy agencies. So while we're not necessarily only advocating, we are actually doing service provision. There are many agencies out there who have come together through various coalitions. And I was Immigrant Services and Connections, which is a program that JFCS is a part of. BCAP is also part of it. PHDC is also a part of it. There are organizations that all have very varying degrees of services that they offer on behalf of immigrants and refugees. So making sure that it is understood what services are out there and what programs exist to help the families. So all of us coming together doing the work that we do, which can feel very siloed when we're working with specific families. There are organizations that come together on behalf of many different families and have offerings that are available to many different populations. So kind of getting out there the word of what services are available to them, and then within each organization thinking about what that kind of assimilation process looks like for a newly arrived family. What are the needs that they have? Finding employment, getting the kids in school, helping families to understand the benefits that they have available to them. What are the resources that are out there that we can help them tap into so that they understand what is available to them? And then the other part of it is understanding basic human rights and human needs. I'm just thinking about Pittsburgh Regional Transit and the access to transportation is, that varies so greatly from city to city. I think of another partner refugee resettlement agency that we've worked alongside in Philadelphia. Philadelphia has great infrastructure for transportation. They may not say the same. I don't live in Philadelphia, so I don't know. But Pittsburgh, this is something, I've lived in Pittsburgh for 30 some odd years, and transportation has always, in my mind, been an issue. And when you look at the 90 varying neighborhoods within the city of Pittsburgh, and then all of the suburbs that are outside the city limits, there are many neighborhoods where potentially there could be affordable housing, but if there's no public transportation, it is not an option for a family to live somewhere where there aren't sidewalks for the kids to walk to school, and there is not a way for the caregiver or the primary employable individual to get to work. So how can we all come together and advocate and say, hey, it's not okay that we're cutting all of these bus routes. This is not an immigrant problem. This is a people problem. This is affecting everyone in this city. Can we find ways to work together and understand where the need is? And the other thing that I'm thinking about is landlords understanding, again, something that we often are looking for is reliable transportation is first and foremost, for sure. But also, is there access to laundry facilities? For families that are, larger families with 4, 5, 6, 7 or more children, the idea of having to take a bus for a half an hour to go and do laundry is a huge issue. And it's often a conversation that we end up having with landlords is, you have hookups, are you willing to provide a washer and dryer? And oftentimes the cost associated with that brings up the rent anywhere from $50 to $100 a month to offer that service. So there, again, all of us are here at the table offering different things for families, but we are all in it for the same reason, which is to advocate on behalf of people, whether or not they are natural-born American citizens who speak English as their first language, or whether they are newly arrived in the country. So just making sure that we are sharing the resources out there. Again, you don't know what you don't know. So we all have to use our voices to get out there and say, these are the resources that are available. These are the organizations that can help. These are the rights of your citizens.
Yeah, and that's why these conversations are so important. And I'm glad that we brought this to the table today. Ms. Bates, and I know you touched on this a little earlier, but how are the most recent immigration policies that's being brought on today, how are they affecting our immigration families and our immigrants here in the Commonwealth?
Yes, so the short version is everyone is afraid, they're being quiet. There are instances where people are eligible for certain services, in need to renew certain things, and they're afraid to do it, which I could argue that that's kind of the point of these policies. And also I'll say, as our organization, it's already happening and we only expect it to get worse, that people are afraid to come ask for help. People are, again, they're self-silencing. There's a drop in demand. There's also concerns of mixed status families, so families where maybe the children were born here, so they are considered citizens, but the parents may be undocumented. And there are additional benefits that they're eligible for, but they're afraid to ask. Let me see. There's also issues within the immigration process overall. Things that were very simple renewals are now requiring multiple appeals. They're requiring extra vetting. Individuals are even afraid to, for example, you have to renew your address, I forget how frequently, and it is a serious issue if you don't do it, but there's individuals who are afraid to do it because they're afraid to draw attention to their application. Also, there's individuals who are traveling, even if they have appropriate status, who are concerned about getting stuck somewhere that they do not belong. There's individuals afraid of being sent places they don't even remember. And so this is leading to loss of income. Again, I mentioned maybe if they had a driver's license, they're afraid to get it renewed. In addition, ICE has decided to, previously there were certain places that ICE said, if we don't have to go find you there, we're not going to do it, such as, give me 1 second, I need to find it, like churches, hospitals, schools, courthouses. ICE had previously said, if we don't have to, we're not going to target that area. They have now said, we don't care. And so now individuals are afraid of churches, schools, hospitals, domestic violence shelters, courts. I've heard of instances where someone had notified ICE and they were afraid to go to their protection from abuse hearing because they heard ICE was coming. And so people are losing out on things that they are absolutely entitled to, benefits, again, additional services, afraid to get jobs. Again, I am not an immigration attorney, and that is a very complex field, but the process is becoming more difficult. People are becoming very, very scared. Even those people who had, I mentioned these quasi-statuses, they are now being expedited for removal. So family members are disappearing. I know in the previous Trump administration, we were doing outreaches, basically encouraging immigrants to make a document, I forget what it's called, but it's similar to a will. Basically, if I get deported, who should get my car? Where should my children go? Documents like that to consider what to do. And so it's people are scared, and they are silencing themselves to try to maintain some semblance of normal.
Absolutely. So time's running down, and this has been a wonderful conversation. I just want to pose this question to the panel, and if you each can take a couple minutes. Let everyone know how important equality in housing, having a safe, affordable place to live, how important is that to everyone, specifically immigrants who come over here to better their lives? Please explain how important that is to them. You can go.
I was like, I had mine. I didn't want to lose it. You need an address to get a lot of things. It's to get into education. There are ways around it, but to get education, to get the phone, to be able to answer these phone calls, to get the internet, where is it going? You need an address to do a lot of things. And then, as Binu mentioned, families wanting to stick together to at least have that internal support, even if they don't have it from, or feel they don't have it from the outside. If we can't be together, who's here to help me? If some of the family has to work, who's watching the kids if we don't have a place for the kids to be? Then that gets into the safety of the children. Then that gets into children turning to violence. Like, having a safe, a stable, a clean, a maintained place to live is just the foundation for so much. It is the beginning of it all.
We'll go to Binu, and then we'll start with you.
In my perception, it's the same thing. It's a lot of things are connected, and yes, if they do certain like educational system to the tenants, or I'm going for that, like for the tenants and for the new coming immigrants or the old immigrants that are here and they need more attention. To educate them and to show them the where they can go to find what is the most important thing. I also want to go back to that question. I think is the previous one. I was talking about filling the form for the like application. I was trying to fill the application for each tenant, and they were requiring phone number for each of them. They are very new to the United States, and 6 people, they think they do not need a phone, and they cannot afford it to that phone. And they only have, like 2 people have their cell phone number. They do not know how to use email, and it would be more understandable if the landlord understood more, and then there is a space like they have to fill that, and every phone number have to be separate, all the email have to be separate. I was filling an application yesterday, and then I put my work email, my personal email, and then like contact at BCAP, and then go through those individual application. it's very difficult. I think I'm off the topic, but
That's okay. That's okay. You went back to
I
the
was like,
previous
yeah.
question.
I was like,
Thank you. Thank you. Howard, pose that question to you.
Yeah, in terms of how important is housing for immigrants, communities, and for households, I will talk a little bit of the Pittsburgh Hispanic Development Corporation when it was created in 2012. The founders created the incubator for entrepreneurs, okay, created businesses in the greater Pittsburgh area. But they realized that they need to have an entrepreneurship program and a housing program, because without housing, you cannot be an entrepreneur. You cannot start. You need housing as a base of everything. You need housing first as a human right, and then you need housing because that's where your family, with your more intimate circle, will be with you, and maybe that's the reason why you are in the United States or somewhere else. So housing is a social determinant of health as well. Housing is many things, many components of education, of employment, or health, of development. So housing is key for everyone who wants to start a life in the United States or in another country. So that's why housing is so important. Making access to housing equal, providing equity. I was just thinking aloud a few minutes, like, this is a good example of equity, okay? If you want us as panel participating today, you create an ecosystem that everyone can access to this stage, that everyone that is on the table can understand what we are saying. Even though we are diverse, we are different, but in the mission of transmitting what we have to say, you created an ecosystem that is equal for everyone, and you're providing equity. So that's what we need to think when we talk about housing, how to make an opportunity for everyone regarding the diversity we have.
Absolutely. Sarah, you want to take the question?
I think you covered most of it, but something that I keep thinking about is that our immigrant and refugee families, above all, they are resilient, right? They have come here overcoming potentially life-threatening adversity, potentially health adversity, whatever that they have come here to overcome. They are coming here again to make a better life. And as everyone on the panel has pointed out, housing is a very basic necessity. It is where your family can come together. It is where you have meals together. It is where children do their, work on their studies together. Maybe families are taking English language courses virtually, and they're doing that in their home. It is a space where they can come together and feel safe and feel protected, and that they have each other. So specifically for refugee families that arrive here, I would say 98% of the families that we resettle initially come and are placed in a hotel because it takes time to find housing for them. And that is not stable. It is not a great environment for a family of 7 to be staying in 2 hotel rooms. It's very difficult to get students, to get children into school through the McKinney-Vento Act, which allows families that are unhoused to go to school. So oftentimes, if a family is in a hotel for 2-3 months, those kids are not going to school. They are just living in the hotel space. They aren't learning about how to live in a home. They aren't learning about upkeep of a home. So getting them that stable place to start as their first place to have as a jumping off point. And as Jajana mentioned, it's the basis for everything. You need to have an address in order to fill out applications, to apply for jobs, to get a state ID, to do so many things. So it is a basic human right that is, again, this is not just an immigrant and refugee problem. This is a people problem. We need to have equitable housing for everyone. Everyone has a right to live in a space that feels safe, that feels like a home, and that they can build for themselves.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone for being here, for agreeing to participate in this panel. This was an awesome conversation, and I look forward to having conversations with you all again in the future about this, so please keep in touch. But just to piggyback off of what Sarah said, I mean, housing is a basic human right. And for some reason, we can't get that right. Just a place for a person or a family to live has become such a barrier to people. When you mentioned that one of the families were living in a hotel, my cousin, she was in the process of purchasing a house and stayed in a hotel with the kids, and couldn't get her kids into school because they wouldn't take the address. So her kids were kind of in limbo, and I think she even went to like a Airbnb also, and they wouldn't take that address. I'm like, before they used to put the kids, they used to open the doors and let kids come into schools. So it's like, now it's housing is so important, and to have equal access to housing is also important. So we here at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, we investigate discrimination complaints. So if anyone feels as though they've been discriminated against, please contact us, reach out to us, and we're here for you. I just want to open the panel up to questions from the audience. So if anyone has a question, there's a microphone. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tamara Shahade Cope.
Hello.
I'm a hearing examiner with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. Thank you so much for this really informative presentation. I had, I guess, two questions. And one of the things, Sarah, you had mentioned this, the kind of recurring theme in addition to, immigrants being people, is this concept, this idea of safety, right? And not just, residential safety, socioeconomic safety, and stability. And so I guess there's two related questions. One is, how has, for folks, any of you, if you do any community outreach and engagement work, how has that changed? Times are increasingly unsafe, and just wondering whether the way that you've been doing outreach to the communities you serve has changed because of it. Again, trying to create this safe space for individuals. And the second one is just generally, just curious how people find out about your services. I know in immigrant communities, a lot of things might be word of mouth, but if you're not a refugee seeking resettlement services, generally, how are people finding out about the services that you provide?
Great question. Thank you.
What was the first part of the question was how outreach has changed. So I think that, and you mentioned actually as part of your question, thank you for bringing this up, is internal communications. Maybe that's not the best way to put it, but families speak to each other. They will find, despite the fact that communities can't necessarily all reside in the same neighborhood, they do have ways of communicating with each other. So we often will set up WhatsApp groups for the various languages, and the word will spread amongst each other. The communities of people come together. Native language speakers will find each other. But the great thing about every service organization that's out there really is that, again, when it comes to advocacy, what are the organizations that know what is out, the programs that are out there, and how do they spread that word? So specifically, going back to Isaac, the Immigrant Services and Connections Program, anyone can make a referral to that. So if somebody went into Google and typed in, how can I help my refugee neighbor find blank? Likely Isaac would come up. And they do service coordination. So somebody within a doctor can make a referral, a social worker can make a referral, a neighbor can make a referral. So anybody can find what's out there and make referrals to the various agencies. I think that, again, speaking to the fear that people have, outreach is difficult right now. It is harder to get people to come to, as an example, open office hours. where we're saying, listen, we're going to have the Dari interpreter. This day is dedicated to Dari speakers. Maybe not as many people are going to show up, but just continuously using our voices to say, these are the things that are out there. This is the work that is being done. This is how you can find us. It's all about being informed and knowing what is out there in order to be able to point people in the right direction. How can you could reach out to anyone on this panel really and say, hey, I need help with this. And likely we all would know the resources. If our agency wasn't able to assist, we likely know how to assist. So calling and advocating on behalf of your neighbors and your friends and your community members is the most important thing. Find out what the resources are that are out there and see how you can get them into the hands of the people who need them.
Absolutely. Yes, and contact the PHRC if you need more information, or any of our panelists here. Do we have any other questions?
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. You can add. You can step up. Did you want to say something, Deshaun?
Yeah, I was just going to add, as far as CJP, we don't for better or for worse, we don't advertise our outreaches on social media because we don't want the address to fall into the wrong hands. And so we often go into churches, into places where people are already gathering, English language classes. We hold presentations during that time and space where the immigrant community already is, and we are now relying on that word of mouth for individuals to share with one another that this is the time, this is the place. So just to acknowledge that that's how we're kind of handling this.
I think that's wonderful because at Just Mediation Pittsburgh, we make referrals to CJP specifically for these types of situations. And so for my organization, I'm wondering, like, how can JMP best reach immigrant and refugee populations? Because we don't care what your immigration status is. We don't, like, none of that matters to us. We want to help you stay in your home. And, like, how do I tell everyone about that?
Well, I can help with that since we are in the same collaboration. At least, for example, at PHCC, we have a day of the week, certain hours that we receive people in order to address legal matters, including housing, including in terms of businesses or employment. And after that, as Sarah was mentioning a few minutes ago, the trust that we have, that we gain from the community throughout this year, working together, assisting the community in the greater Pittsburgh area, with the connections that we built, that we know, and this is key. I don't know how many times I say this on a panel or a meeting. We need to know what are the kind of services that every organization provide in order to assist better and navigate the client. And I think that we have been creating that landscape, and we know the resources that every organization has that facilitate communication. And in terms of, I will try to connect your comment with the previous question. The human nature is adaptation. So we are just adapting what we already have to make it better and in service of the clients. So that's what we are doing, and that's what we will do for the years to come.
Thank you so much. Once again, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for being here. This was a great conversation. I look forward to having a relationship with you all. We have our hearing examiner here, Ms. Cope.